Okay. Do you all see the screen? Okay.
Yes, I see it
Yes.
clearly.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
All right. Perfect. So I am not the organizer of this. I'm invited, so I'm going to turn it over to the organizer. And oh, that's my face. That's me. So I will say, let's just get ready to get started. So a little bit about myself, and thank you all for submitting these questions. I am so happy to be here, and I am so happy to be a part of the story. What you guys are doing on Hear My Story is so amazing and it's so beautiful. And so I am definitely a huge fan of what you guys are doing. If you don't mind writing in the chat, letting me know what country are you representing and your name. If you could put that in the chat today, I would love to see who we have on the call today to have this amazing conversation. And so I'm known as Dr. Bowtie Todd. A little bit about myself is I live in the United States, of course. I was born in South Carolina, and now I live in Arkansas, which is actually I live in a place where Walmart headquarters exists. So this is like home of Walmart. And so this is where I live at with my wife and our two fur babies. We have a golden and we have a cat. And so this is where we live. We've been in quarantine, for the last, 14, 13 weeks. And I'm so used to traveling the world. And I have literally been traveling from the bedroom to the office. That has been my travels every day. But I am very, very passionate about my mission statement. And my mission statement is to wake up every day to create spaces for all humans to belong and thrive together, one bow tie combo at a time. And so you may see me talk about the bow tie philosophy and this whole necktie deal that you see across my Instagram or social media. But for me, the necktie is really it's a deep philosophy, and it's how I show up to everyday conversations. And I created an acronym, which is the starting letter with the expression. And I share it with you all. And this is how we're going to have our conversation today. So the first letter is B, a bow tie. And so any conversation, you need to be mentally present. Okay, so I need you to be all up in the camera. I need you to be here, okay, with me for this next 30, 40 minutes. The next letter is O, open to new ideas. So I'm going to share with you my perspective, share with you some of my opinions, and you may not agree with it, and that's okay. I just want you to be open to new ideas and feel free, to engage. The next letter of bow tie is W. W is willingness to share your own story. I love that everyone on this call has a story, and it's up to you to share it. So I would love for you to hear from you throughout the conversation. So that's the next letter. And then the last piece of the bow tie is the TIE. And that's really when you try to put this knot in the middle. If you wear bow ties, I actually tie this myself. And I usually see people say, wow, that's so hard to make this knot. And I've also seen that's very challenging in conversations. How do you tie it together? How do you leave the conversation better than you came in? And so that's what we want to do today. We want to have a bow tie conversation, and we're going to tie it together, and we're going to have some fun. And thank y'all so much once again for inviting me. And so that's why I'm Dr. Bowtie Todd. And I see that you guys have prepared some questions for me. And so we're going to go through those questions, and we're just going to have a good old combo. And it's so great to see so many people here from Canada, Indonesia, sure. Oh my God, sir, like this is amazing. England, Argentina, Peru. Oh my gosh, I love this. By the way, my wife is from Guadalajara, Mexico. So I'm married. I'm married to the whole Spanish descent in my household. It's really great. It's beautiful here. But it's really good. Where are my Brazilian Israel? Where's my Brazilians? I don't see no Brazilians. I lived in Brazil for a little bit, so I love Brazil, but all these countries are amazing. And I just think it's just so amazing to have this conversation. So let's get started. Let's see what you guys prepared for me. All right, we're going to have an open dialogue. So what does that mean? That means at any time, if you have questions or if you want to engage and ask some more questions, feel free to unmute your mic and continue the conversation. How this format will go is that basically you guys prepared questions for me. I'm going to answer those questions, give you my opinion, and then I'm going to open it up and see if anybody have a response. And we'll try to keep it to maybe 1 or 2 people. And then at the end of the conversation, we're going to open it up for any questions you all would like to ask me or just discuss among yourselves. Is that cool? If that's cool, give me a thumbs up in the chat or a thumbs up on the video. All right, I see a couple of thumbs up. There we go. All right, so here's the big question. Why does racism exist? Why are we yet in 2020, our generation, why are we still dealing with racism? Okay, and let's start from the beginning, because to really understand this term, you have to really understand how this term was created. And race is really a false classification of people that is not based on any real biological or scientific truth. It's really not real, right? It was really built to really make some, separations between race. I mean, it has nothing to do with scientific truth. And race is, it was built into the DNA of the world because it was a political agenda. It was a political construction, and it was created by people. It wasn't a natural development. So this is not something that, we say, oh, wow, let's look at how this derived. No, people created this construct, and it was a social construct and a political construct. So this is what's very, very interesting. People created this, and the concept of race was created as a classification of human beings with the purpose of giving power to white people. I mean, that's really what it was created for. And so you asked me the question, why does it exist? Well, it was exist to have people of power and dominance in a culture. I mean, that's exactly why it was to have privilege and to have haves and have-nots, okay? Now, why does it still exist today? Guess what? Some people don't even know that it still exists. Some people have never experienced racism, especially white people have never experienced racism. So some white people still do not think it exists today. And so you got to understand that perspective and why it's so challenging, because you can't really dismantle something and get rid of something that you don't see. It's like, well, you're telling me something that exists and I don't get it. I don't see it. And so this is what's the issue today, because the most powerful people in the world who actually took the power don't understand the power they have. And they're the ones who created it. And so those are the ones who actually can dismantle the system more than marginalized communities. And so you got to understand why it's still here today. And racism is, it's a long history of this agenda. And I encourage you all to read that, because our generation, your generation, I'm not that much older, but I'm not in your generation as much. We did not create this. We did not create this system, okay? You or I did not create the system, but we're living in it, and it's up to us to help ensure that we continue to disrupt and dismantle this system, because racism, you or I, we do not like that. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's the first question. Why does racism exist? Because it was created by people and they wanted to be powerful. That's really what it was. Okay, let's go to the next question. Have you ever seen a case of violent racism? What can we do in those cases? So when you say violent racism, I think about, this can come in different forms, okay? Violence can happen physical, mental, it could be verbal abuse. It's so many forms of that. Yes, I have seen people mistreated based on the color of their skin. In my work every day, I look at different situations with a lot of our clients around the world where some of these concepts and constructs exist in the workplace. And it takes different forms, right? Consciously and unconsciously. So sometimes you may not even know that you are a racist. And that can lead to certain type of microaggressions as well as some balanced behavior when you're interacting with somebody. So what can we do in those cases when you see violence? Well, it always depends, right? Everything depends on your situation. the first thing I would give you the advice of is that you want to make sure that you are aware of the situation as much as you can, and make sure that yourself is safe, right? You don't want to put yourself in a situation to escalate violence. So you always want to make sure that you're not escalating violence, which sometimes when we intervene, depending on the situation, it can get worse than better. But this is something really, really cool that we have that they did not have 60 years ago. We have these phones, these devices. And so what you can do, and this is why the world is changing, because we can make news happen is like just like that. And so one of the things you can do, if you feel like you can't intervene, you could definitely record it, because now it's documented what happened. So you can definitely help a case when it comes to legal. But we understand in certain countries, legal, the police may make it worse, depending on the country you live in. Because I've been in some other countries, and some people may not really trust the police system there. So sometimes as a community member, if you can intervene and try to de-escalate the situation, try to do that. But you want to make sure that you are not, making it worse. And also, if you are able to comfort the person who is actually experiencing this, as in talking to them afterwards and making sure they're okay, and if they need anything, if they need help of support, these are things you can do. You can start to engage in conversations. Also, the other thing is that you need to report it. If you can report it to your local authorities or whomever, your parents or your school, it depends on your situation, but you should report it. And you need to let other people know that it happened, and that we don't stand for that type of behavior. But once again, if it's violent, you need to make sure you're aware of your situation, because you don't want to make it worse, and you definitely don't want to put yourself in harm's way. The next question, have you ever experienced discrimination? How do you recommend dealing with it, especially for young people? So discrimination, discrimination can take a lot of forms, right? You could be discriminated based on your race, based on your gender, based on your sexual orientation, your values, your belief. I mean, you could be discriminated on a lot of things. In certain countries, discrimination laws protect your rights. In certain countries, they're still fighting for rights, like gender rights and women rights in certain countries, etc. And so depending on the laws of the land, you should understand what's in place for discrimination and what's protected. Yes, I have felt discrimination before, also due to my appearance. When I was in college, I actually did not get a role because of my appearance when I was in college. And I was a student leader. Can you believe that? Dr. Bowtie, Todd could not get a role, and I was already a student leader on campus, and they did not give me the role for orientation. I will never forget it. It's because of my appearance. And so how did I deal with it? Personally, it hurt me so much that I didn't tell. Matter of fact, I don't really talk about this story at all. This is like my first time talking about it in years. But it hurt me so much that I did not want to go tell anyone. I felt less than. I felt like my pride, everything was just shot. And I was starting to examine, like, what is wrong with me? What can I fix? Why didn't I get that opportunity? And so I did have a mentor who I was able to talk to about it, and they were able to advocate for me, and we were able to go through that situation. But it's a hurtful feeling. I mean, think about any time that you were rejected for something, and just maximize that by 10 times, and understand that you're rejected for something that you can't control. I mean, that's a very, very hurtful feeling. And so I would tell you all what I recommend young people to do in these situations. If you experience discrimination, you need to tell somebody. You need to tell your mentors. You need to tell your role models, because they can help you get through the situation. Don't keep it in yourself, because you can lead to stress and anxiety, and it can lead to some harmful behaviors that you I don't recommend. So talk it out with somebody you trust and get some feedback and get some advice. You can always call me and we could talk about it. So you have a friend, a big brother over here, call me anytime. The next question is why people don't take racism seriously. Well, I think that's similar to what I answered earlier. It's because people don't know. And people usually don't take things seriously when it does not affect them. Right? It's like, oh, that's I don't see color. I see people and I don't understand it. I don't feel it. So people don't take it seriously. They don't think, some people really don't think racism is a serious issue. And that's because it's unconscious. They may not be aware of it, but as a Black man living in America, in the United States, as a Black man living in the United States, I'm very aware of my race. Interesting enough, I was taught my race, right? It's not something I was like, oh, you know what? I want to be Black. I want to be white. I want to be brown. No, the U.S. soil that I live in, they said, nope, you are a Black man. And it was on my birth certificate. We have to check a lot of boxes for the government. And so I'm reminded every day when I apply for jobs, when I go into places, that I am a Black man. I'm also reminded every day when people could potentially look at me differently because of the color of my skin. So, you know, if I have on a hoodie, like if I wasn't dressed in a bow tie and my shirt and I had on a hoodie and I was out, you know, in a public store, I have seen people, like white women, they have literally, you know, grabbed their purse, you know, a little bit, you know, harder and, you know, close to their side. Or when you're going into an elevator, I have seen people shift in the elevator because they're scared. They have seen things in media and movies that people who look like me in that dress is seen as like a thug or a criminal. So those are stereotypes. So once again, people do this because they don't understand that what you watch and what you read and listen to is so vital to how you treat other people. Because it actually can help or hurt you. And so once again, some people don't see it seriously. They say, oh, you know, that's not race. It's just a bad person that we're thinking about. Well, usually in history, the most bad people, especially in the United States, were always seen to be Black. You know, Black people was the bad people. And you know what? This is not just a United States issue. I go around the world, and I'm not going to call it the countries, but when I go around the world, even around the world, I see Africans, I see Blacks treated differently. I see Blacks and Africans are in the poorer parts of the cities. You know, I see a lot of indigenous people treated differently. And you got to ask, why is that? Why is it when we go to France or we go to Brazil, we go to London, that most people who are homeless that you see are darker skinned? You don't see a lot of lighter skinned white people homeless, you know, begging for things. Why is that? You know, and so these are some things that you got to think about. How did we get here today? And understand that some people don't take the time to learn the history. And so that's why they don't take it serious. And even young people, some young people say, hey, I don't care about that. It doesn't impact me. But people don't understand that you and I would not be together on this call today if we didn't have people stand up for the truth and stand up for equal and human rights. We would not have this conversation today. So I think it's really beautiful what you guys are doing to continue these conversations to make it happen. So the next question is, how did people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks make a huge change? And how do you think we can do that too? That is such a beautiful question. You know, I definitely love Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. And I know those are two names that a lot of people know around the world. But guess what? There are so many other names. There are so many other names who have made a huge change. And guess what? I'm looking at all those names right now on this screen. I'm looking at all of your names. These are the names that's making a huge change. And you say, so how do I think we can do that? Guess what? You're doing it already. You're already making a huge change because you're spending a piece of your Saturday morning listening and having a conversation about issues and trying to think about how we can solve it and make things better for people. That's the huge change that we need. So this is one thing I'm going to encourage you all. I'm tired of people telling young people, you're the future leaders. No, you're not the future leaders. You're the leaders right now. You don't need to wait until tomorrow to lead. You don't need to wait until you're 25 or 30 or 50 to lead. You don't need to wait until you have a big job and a lot of money to lead. You know where leadership starts? In your heart and your mind and your hands and your feet with your behavior. And so you guys are leading right now. And so I say, look at those names and replace those names with your name and ask yourself the question, how am I leading and how am I being a part of the change today? Am I happy to say that I went to sleep and I did something positive to make this world a better place? Those are the questions that only you can answer. And I do believe that all of you all have the potential to be bigger and better than a Martin Luther King or a Rosa Parks, because your heart and your mind can follow suit. So know that, and that's how you all can do that too. The next question is, how effective is the local community approach to making systemic change versus federal government? Well, once again, I do believe that everybody has a role and everybody must work together. So I'm not going to say it's a federal government or it's the local community. It's both. And we have to be sure that we're all having conversations and looking at policies and procedures, and also looking at our values and ensuring that we have the change we want to see and working towards that. So for example, I do believe there's power in local communities. I do. The local communities are the ones who elect the officials, right? They're the ones who put those people in power. But the local communities, sometimes due to the narrative, they feel like they don't have the power because they're not the one in the seat. But I'm telling you all do have power. And the first people who don't have the power is the people who don't think they have it. I mean, honestly, if you don't believe that you have power, you're not going to have it. But I do believe local community members have so much power than they even can imagine, because it's one small thing that you can do to make a big difference. It can change the whole narrative. And so I definitely believe that local communities are effective in driving systemic change, but you also need to look and unpack policies and procedures with the federal government. Everyone has a role to play, and it's up to you and your situation and how you want to play that role. You may be the next president or the next leader of your country. So I don't want to say that when you're the leader of your country, you're not going to be effective in systemic change. Yes, you will. You will be effective because we're having this conversation today. And I'm going to be there rooting for you with my sign on the front row. And I was like, you remember we had Bowtie combo? No. But no, all jokes aside, I do believe that the local community has a big voice and a big, powerful platform. And look at it. Look at what's happening right now. The local community is what is really has made this amazing conversation happen for the world about Black Lives Matter. That didn't happen from the federal government, not at all. That happened from the local community. It happened from people like you, understanding your power, understanding your right, and standing up for something to make a difference. So the next question is how to educate and change people's perspective about racial negative stereotypes. So this is you could do this in various ways. First, I think you could do this by, it's all about awareness and education. So it's a learning platform of how you change people's perspectives, and people learn differently. So I want you to know, as young people, you may like to learn by looking at a TikTok video. Maybe that's you, but that's not how I learn. I learn by reading a book, and you may want to learn by reading a book, or you may want to learn by watching a movie. You may want to learn by writing your own program or listening into a webinar. So you got to understand that everyone learns differently. And if you want to help change someone's perspective, you got to ask them how they learn, and then you should help educate them in the way they want to learn. because so many times we try to educate people on the ways of how we like to be educated. And so it don't really help a lot of people who we're trying to change, because they're essentially, they're not like you, a lot. So I think that's number one. If you want to help change perception, continue on your social media, continue to put in videos, continue to put about, quotes, positive people. If you have people, like when you saying racial, if you have, black and brown or different color, friends, etc., tell their stories and let them utilize your platforms. You right? That's some ways that you can help change perceptions. The other things you can help change stereotypes is all about the experience, right? So once you learn and you're aware, people experience different situations, and that helps change perspectives as well. And so ensure that you are taking people along with your experience. And sometimes these people may be your parents. They may be your family members, because we have some family members who they just don't get it. And so sometimes it's important for them to see your experience, because what we are seeing in research is that a lot of parents and grandparents are changing their mindset about racial attitudes because of their kids. Because guess what? You guys, it's like, your love does not see race. Your love does not see gender. It's all about human empathy and compassion. So your parents never know who you're going to bring home. They think they know, but they never know. And so that's why a lot of children are changing parents' hearts, because of how we show up today. So once again, understand the power you have just by modeling the behavior you wish to see, because your behavior can help change a lot of people's perceptions, just by how you talk about your friends when they're not there, just how you talk about other groups when people are not in the room, right? That is so powerful. It's so powerful also when you see your friends or your family members say something that's probably shouldn't have been the correct way they said it. You stand up and you help educate them, and you help take them along for the experience and say, hey, I met Dr. Jenkins, and Dr. Jenkins is a Black guy from the United States, and he's not a thug. He has a bow tie and a smile, But the thing is that you have to take people on the journey. But one thing that I see a lot of people do, and takes special people to do this. A lot of people they say, oh, I don't want to deal with them, and they go the other way. Well, you don't have to. So I know sometimes people don't have the energy. So I'm not saying you have to do that. But I have seen that I was able to help people when I stay and ask questions. I say, so why do you feel this way? So how did you learn that? I keep asking, I'm curious. I become very, very curious, and I'm bold to ask those uncomfortable questions before I give them my perspective. Because when I usually ask those questions, then I start to learn, oh, wow, they just never had that experience like I had. So I can assume that they know what I know, but I ask those questions, and now I'm able to effectively engage in dialogue and not a debate. I'm not trying to debate about racism. I will talk to you about racism, but I am not about to debate with you. And so if you want to have a conversation, a dialogue, I think that can open up vulnerability, and it can open up space for learning. And don't forget, if you take up space, make sure you give space, because you need to make sure that person is able to also articulate how they feel as well. So that is my perspective of that. Oh, look at that. We're now at Q&A. Those are awesome questions, by the way. Thank you all for submitting those questions to me. Hopefully you were able to engage and learn a couple of things, but now this is where we're at. We're gonna open it up for any questions. It can be about racism, discrimination. It could be about my personal journey or my family life, etc. I'm an open book. So if you want to unmute your mic and ask some questions, let's do it. And you guys look beautiful, by the way. Y'all look so great. I love this. Y'all bringing the whole world to my house right now. And I'm so full over here, so full of love. So, all right, let's open it up for a Q&A. Anybody want to be brave and start us off? Oh, you guys are gonna put it in the chat. Sorry, you can also ask the question too, but it's okay. I will pay attention to the chat as well. Um, okay, what will you say to young people that suffer from it? What is it? What is it? Is it racism, discrimination, or
Yeah, it's racism.
racism?
It's
Okay,
not
yes,
my question, sorry.
oh no, it's okay. And don't forget, you all, if you know, it's fine to use the chat box too. You don't have to unmute yourself. I'm fine with either or. So think of some questions. Okay, so what will you say to young people that suffer from it? First of all, it depends, right? Everything depends on what does that mean for you. But I would tell you, my first advice is that if you ever experience racism or something around your gender or someone mistreating you, spend some time to heal. You have to heal. What do I mean by that? You have to go through this process to understand what happened, and you have to unpack that with the positive behavior. If it's something that was immediate, you definitely should tell someone that you trust, your mentor, your parents, whomever, or you need to go to the process of understanding that, you know, what that situation was, and what is your outlets to explore. But once again, as I said, when I was in college and I experienced it, my first thing that I did is I retreated to my room, my dorm room, and I was hurt. I cried, and I started having this self-doubt and insecurity, like I was really less than. And so I tell people all the time, you're going to go through that, and that's your suffering. From that piece internally, you also can suffer externally by not getting the opportunity, by being embarrassed, by having that harassment. And so you need to examine both, heal inside your heart and heal on the outside. And I think you can heal on the outside by making sure the people who you trust understand what happened, so it won't ever happen again. So that'd be my advice for that, for young people. But don't hold it in. Don't hold it in, my people. My people, don't hold it in, my brothers and sisters. Don't hold it in. Talk about it, and let's work through it. All right, the next question. Oh, no question. Any other questions?
Can I do a question?
Yeah.
All right. What do you think about to treat to the young men's and white? This is obviously and white young men's and women's and the kids to avoid the racism and to avoid them to be racist.
Okay, so I think I heard you correctly, but help me out if I'm saying it wrong. Are you saying what are advice I have for uh, parents or individuals to talk to young children about not growing up to be racist, etc.? Is that similar what you ask, or clarify for me?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, great. So so I would say my first advice for helping young children understand about racism is all about their exposure, right? It's all about, once again, what are you reading to them? What are they watching on TV? Who do they hang out with? Do they go to other cultural celebrations, right? You have to be able to facilitate that learning, because it's a muscle that you have to strengthen and educate and make sure awareness are there, because when someone get in a different situation, they can have an open heart and open mind. But if they never was in that situation growing up, they may not know how to respond. And so I think it's very important. I think it's very important if you have little brothers, or if you have talking to other parents who want to educate children, start letting them watch cartoons that looks very different than them, right? That's where it starts. Think about when you were younger. You know, what did you watch on TV? You know, what games did you play? What type of friends did you have? Were they diverse friends, or were they the same friends that looked like you? See, that's where it starts there, because if you don't grow up with that muscle of multiculturalism and diversity, you're going to have to relearn or unlearn some things when you're adults. And I'm telling you, a lot of adults don't like to unlearn and relearn things, especially when they get to certain ages. And that's why we are still in this situation today.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, doctor.
No problem, no problem. The next question, what do you suggest as exclusive solutions to subtle forms of racism in school around the world? So solutions. Let's see here. So it'd be a few things. So if you're in school and you're seeing some things happen in your classroom or in your friends group, and you need to stand up for those situations. The first solution is, I mean, you really need to assess the environment, but it's actually okay to, oh, sorry, it's more people coming in. Let's see here. Sorry, I see like all the notifications. Let's admit these great folks in. All right. So the other thing is that you want to make sure that you speak up, right? You want to speak up if people are even doing subtle, but you have to do it in a very non-threatening way, because if you do it in a threatening way, it may escalate. You know, because nobody ever want to be called out. Especially, I remember when I was in high school, and I remember trying to be cool. And if someone tried to come at me and say, "Oh, Todd, you did this and said that," you know, it's gonna be like, who are you? You know how your friends do. They're interesting people. And so the deal is that you have to do it in a way that is gonna be healthy, right? A healthy way. And now if it's hurting someone, and if it's subtle, they may not understand, but you can bring awareness to it and say, hey, why did you just say the bow tie guy? You know, like in a negative way. If they was trying to say something subtle like, oh, he wears a bow tie, he thinks he's so da da da. That's actually like a microaggression there in a subtle form. And then you can interrupt that by saying, hey, so what makes you think that? So sometimes people are already said those things because they didn't even realize they said it, but it's deeply embedded in their heart. And so you have to be curious and ask those questions. So I think that's a solution. Ask questions, be bold, as well as try to have healthy dialogue. But if it's something that's putting someone in hurt or harm's way, stand up and be a bystander and intervene if you can in a safe way. And it's also some other things you can do, but those are kind of like quick solutions. Let's see here. Next question. Yes, go ahead. You got to unmute yourself. There we go. There we go, bro.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you think the stereotypes are creating? How, how?
How do stereotypes get created, or?
Yeah.
Well, stereotypes are always created, and how they're amplified is really through social media and TVs and films, right? Think about it. When you look at American or United States movies, you know, who's always the most powerful people? Who has the big houses? Who have the nice cars? Yeah, they're white. So you don't really see a lot of films with Black successful people, Black doctors, Black professors, Black, this great fathers. It's always the narrative of the powerful narrative. And so think about that. So this follow me down this journey. So when you have parents who say, oh, you should date a white man or a white woman, from America. How do you think they came to that conclusion and they probably never even been to America? Well, they look at the movies, they look at Hollywood. And so that's how stereotypes are continue to be reiterated. It's based on the things you see on TV, because a lot of times people have not experienced these other cultures. They see it based on how they learn. And a lot of school systems don't teach the true narratives of marginalized communities. And that once again is because of the powerful narrative of privilege, and they're keeping the same narrative. But now it's an uprise. Our generation, your generation, is asking more questions, and they can think critically, and they can say, oh, that's not all people. And so I think those how stereotypes are created. Stereotypes are also created not only by what you see, but it's also what you read, as well in books or the newspaper. I don't think you all read newspapers anymore, but that's another media. The media is another way that can continue to reiterate stereotypes. So that's another way today of how they're continue to be created. The next question. I have a question from someone in my Interact group. What is your opinion award ceremony specifically for Black people? What is your opinion award ceremonies? Oh, I see what you're saying. Got it. What is my opinion when it's like you have awards and you have celebration just only for Black people? Is that potentially your question?
I think it was because they've seen like backlash online from people, you know, the type of people that are saying all lives matter and stuff. They've seen those type of people having backlash saying that it's not inclusive to have just like Black only ceremonies or something, and they wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I honestly do believe in true inclusivity, and I do believe in celebrating human lives. I believe in human ability, human rights, human compassion. I do believe in human beings, right? I understand it's just like where we at with this all lives matter versus Black lives matter debate. Once again, I don't debate as much as I used to. I like to have dialogue. But I will say in this situation, the reason why you got to think about why this was created. Some people just see the outcome and the solution. They see the awards, they see the event, but they don't know how we got there. And if you understand how we got there, I don't think they will ask that question. And so my opinion is that people have to go and understand the history, because Blacks, even still today, 400 years, 500 years later, Black has never been given the same opportunities. So that's why organizations had to go create their own ceremonies. They had to create their own churches, create their own hospitals, their own schools, because so many times if you were Black and your skin color, you were rejected and you were saying you don't belong here. So people created things that they didn't see, and that's how those platforms continue to arise. But we do understand that if you're a younger generation, you like, okay, like, why are we doing all of this for those? Like, why they get the special treatment? Well, you got to understand this happened years and years ago before we were born. Also, you look at other countries. I know some other countries that you can get into college if you have a certain, skin tone or a certain background. You can get free tuition. And some people like, hey, I'm just going to mark that because I can get free tuition. Well, you got to also understand the system of why that was created, probably because, once again, those individuals did not have the ability and the access, not the access to be able to go to those schools. So I would tell your Interact Club is that my opinion is that you have to go and learn the history of how we got there, or how we got to that event. And I do believe that those events should still happen for all people. I believe that it should happen for Black people, women, sexual orientation, because so many times if you wasn't a white, powerful male, you didn't get recognized. That's why we had to start women rights. We had to start gay rights. We had to start Black rights. We had to start disability rights. We had to start all these things, because if you wasn't the white, powerful guy, it's like you didn't have a right. And so that's why these events and initiatives are created, because if they wasn't created, guess what? Once again, we probably wouldn't be all talking together. And it's deeper than race, it's deeper than gender. I can go to another country and I can talk about the Asian culture. I can talk about the Indian culture. Everyone has these interesting subgroups, in and out groups of your communities that was built based on marginalization and power structure. All right, here's another question. Oh, okay, wow. Okay, what do you recommend to the police departments from the US to avoid the violence against the people? Well, this is a loaded question. I would say that it really depends on the police department. It depends on the climate and culture, but I always tell people to start with education, starts with reviewing your policies and procedures, as well as understanding the culture of your city and your community. You need to look at all those above. If I say, hey, what you should start with first is conversations and training and getting to know the Black and brown individuals of your communities in the United States. Because a lot of the police force is not Black and brown, and that's a fact. Across the US is overwhelmingly more white police officers than Black and brown. So I think it's great to have the conversation. But it starts with some systemic changes that's happening in the curriculum. What we call to respond and how we respond to keep everyone safe, right? Not just the person who's the police is arresting, but also the police officer, right? We have some great cops out there that does great things to keep our community safe. And we want to continue to have great cops, but we also have some bad cops who may not understand a lot of these things we're talking about and may not agree. And so they just do whatever they want to do. And that's not appropriate. And so what we're trying to do is talk about how people can be better in their jobs, because in any job, you have good people and bad people. That's just the truth. And so we need to work on it from a whole curriculum, which is like education, training, conversations, and accountability. So that's what the Black Lives Matter and these movements are calling for, accountability. They're saying that if you were an officer and you killed somebody, you should be held accountable. You should not continue to be an officer. And we see this not only in the United States. I've been to other countries too, where the officers, we have some good cops and bad cops. And you all know that on this call. And so I think that's what we're trying to recommend in this situation, is that people need to educate and they need to look at their policies, because these policies are the ones that allow for bad cops to get away. And not every policy is terrible. In every city, some cities are doing really well, but we also have some cities that need some work, and we could always get better. The next question is, what is the reason for the racism and discrimination of men when women take the leadership position? It always depends, but I say my immediate reaction is that men, they're just scared. They're scared that for first time, women's so much better than they are, and you all are. You think about women are incredible human beings. They are created to do something that is impossible to us, which is to birth new life into the world. I mean, that is incredible. Even if you can't have a child or not, your ability to birth new life is this, or to give life. I mean, that is beautiful. I say that I believe that is this a bias, if you want it from an academic lens, of why men feel threatened when women take leadership? Is there insecurity? Is there bias? Is something that they may not be aware of, that they feel less than, they feel insecure once again. And it's really just a big threat, because if you were born and you always understood that the man is supposed to be the person always on top and the most powerful person, and the man is the control freak. I didn't mean to say freak, sorry, that's not an academic term. But if you are a control person, if you will, of the situation, and someone come up and try to take your throne, you think you're gonna be like, hey, come on over. No. And so I think that's why you continue to get that lashback, but it's really because of biases. People they learn something, and that's a tendency to treat other people terrible or badly based on that preconceived notion. Let's see here. Oh, all these questions are coming in now. What do you think about Black Lives Matter hashtag? What do I think about it? I think that it is an incredible movement that has brought us all together today, even from a conversation. I think I actually know one of the co-founders. She's a great friend of mine. But it was really, the movement was created just like people like you and I on this call. They really wanted to see a change, and they started to advocate for those changes. And so I do believe in the movement. I believe in several movements, right? Any movements that go after human rights, I believe in it because I believe in human rights. But you got to also understand that if we don't pay attention to these subgroups in the human spectrum, some people may never be seen, right? So if you look in certain, like in Canada, you think about the first people, or around the world, the indigenous populations in Australia. If we say all humans, if all humans matter, you don't see first people at the table or the indigenous population at the table, they may not ever be seen. You get what I'm saying? They may not ever be in the narrative. And so that's why it's so important that we recognize these subgroups and lift them up and elevate their voices. Because if you don't know, especially if you're in a powerful majority, you don't know these subgroups because it does not affect you. And so that's why these hashtags and these, it's not saying that no humans matter. It's like at this time, we need to have a conversation of why this group feel less than or they don't have the same opportunities. And you can do that on multiple forms, right? Like if you go around the table and if you all see the same people that look like you may not think about these other groups because it does not affect you. And so that's why this movement is so big and it matters because it's amplifying the voices that our Black community, my community, we're still hurting today, years and years after slavery in the United States. We were brought here unwanted. It's something that we didn't ask to be here. And we never was able to get the same equal rights. And we fought for civil rights, but we're still fighting. You all, I have a bow tie. I go to Harvard and I still get racism. Like, you can't win, you know, like, geez Louise, you know? So I would tell you still today, it does not matter how big of a house you live in. It does not matter how much money you make. It does not matter your school and your those things are essential and they can help you have a better quality of life. But still today, our skin tone, our gender, our backgrounds, you know, people are they're still threatened by those things. So once again, that's why I believe in that hashtag. And that's what I think about that movement. Do you think racism may have begun because people went to those places which they don't feel comfortable in for heat and other food, and they thought about those people who live in these places as weird? Potentially. But I believe, based on history, it's not that they thought they were weird. I think they thought that they were going to take over. And so it was more of a security thing. It was more of like, let me steal from them now and let us be powerful, because they were greedy and they wanted it all for themselves. And so they needed something to separate groups. And so I don't think they thought the people were weird. Actually, I think they knew the people powerful. They knew how much power indigenous people had. They knew how much power Black people had. I mean, think about it. Look at who built these countries. White folks didn't build this country, you know? And so you got to think about that. They didn't think these people was weird. They just think they want to make sure they put it in a hierarchy system so they can control it. So that's my perspective there. Do you think that school is the first?
Over, right, guys?
I'm sorry, say again.
When the Americans get to Africa and stole the Black people to be slaves, the Black people had like a power to take over them. They had a chance.
Well, you know, I do believe that it was a lot of hidden agendas. They manipulated people, you know, and that they actually was the indigenous folks and Black Africans. I mean, they were all powerful communities. But when the colonizers came in, they negotiated and they manipulated them. They tricked them. You know, they tried to get their credit, and they trusted that relationship. And then once they got on the other side, they really wasn't the trusted partner. So it was a manipulation tool. And I think if they did not manipulate, because you got to think about marginalized, you got to just think about our communities today. We're very open people, you know, and we want to help, you know, and things like that. And some people take advantage of that. And so that's what the colonizer did. They took advantage of their hearts. They took advantage of their women. And they had a hidden agenda to make it powerful. And they did a great job. Look at us today. They created a massive system, and it's working. It's working just like they want it to work. And it's just unfortunate. But hey, we are rising up. We're all rising up, and we're changing the narrative.
So even about the past, it was all about manipulation.
Yes, it's all manipulation. It was all about manipulation.
That is sad. So sad.
Do you think that school is the first that support racism? For example, when in my school, my classmates annoyed a guy, the teacher and the director didn't do anything, even if they seen everything. I think school is a place that, I mean, think about it, right? What we talked about earlier, it's all about learning. It's all about exposure. It's all about experience. Well, you stay in school more than you stay at home and around your friends outside of school, right? You're in school almost, 40 hours a week. And so you think about that, and you think about that narrative. At school, a lot of learning take place, and also behavior is reiterated. So you see your teacher, and if you're a young person, you look at your teacher of power, and your teacher is modeling the behavior. So if your teacher teach you to say something, you think it's correct. That's a position of power. And so I do believe that learning take place in the classroom, and I would not say that, I say schools support racism. I wouldn't say that. But what I would say is that it's so critical and essential what happens in the classroom, because whatever that teacher chooses to say or do is actually impacting either anti-racism or could support racism in general. I know we're getting at time, so I'm going to get ready to wrap it up with these last few questions. And then I'm going to turn it back over to our moderator. What are your thoughts about Black TV representation as a minority, or only a Black show showing Black people, besides the fact that it may increase the racism? I think, once again, I said this a little bit earlier, I think it really depends, and you got to understand why that was created, right? Because it was not a lot of networks that can showcase, Black people on TV. Once again, if we continue to if we never show those narratives, people will never understand the history. Just think about it, everybody on this call. If you never saw that, you probably thought it never existed, And so it's very important that we still have a balance of these initiatives until we really can wake up one day and see that all these things that was brought against us should not be in question for less than. And I think this has now been a beautiful thing, because you think about even Black hair, and Black skin. A lot of those things in the United States was always told less than. And so now we're starting to see movements like, your Black skin is beautiful, your Black hair is beautiful, your expression, because as we was raised up as a community, Black folks was always meant to be entertaining to white people. And so it's like, oh, let them go do the dance. Let them go serve us. But now we are taken back. And we've been doing this for, since the early 1900s. We've been always trying to fight for our own spot. And I do believe this. When Black people win, we all win. Everybody wins. Because, and also as First people, Indigenous people, when they win, really we will all win. Because if you can get to the core of the most marginalized group in your community, everyone else would kind of fall in place. So some people say, well, Todd, why are you guys not talking about women? Why are you not talking about disabilities? I'm telling you, when we're talking about just a race, that can definitely help a lot of other groups. And we have seen that with the civil rights movement, right? But I want to leave you all with this thought, is that it all starts with the dialogue, like we did here. Most people don't even have this dialogue. And so I think it's very, very important that we continue to have these conversations in your own homes, with your own families, schools, and communities, and with each other, because we will all continue to grow together as we learn together. But don't just learn. Also go do something about it, put it in practice. You have to model behavior. It's the small things you can do to make a big difference. Like I said, you can utilize your social media platforms. Share what you learned today. Tag us, tag me. I don't know, like I repost. We got to continue the dialogue. We have to show people what we're standing up for, because so many people are watching you. I believe it or not, I'm telling you, your social media, your family, your friends, they're watching you. They may not tell you that. And so it's very, very critical to understand how much power you have as our leaders today, because what you put out is what people will learn. So be mindful of what you put out. Be mindful of what you say when certain people are not in the room. Be mindful of how you talk about each other. Respect starts with each other. And you have to you have to make sure you're always practicing that. And you won't always get it right, but it's a journey. And it's beautiful when you can understand that you didn't get it right, And so I want to say thank you all so much for just hanging out with me on a Saturday. I would tell you all, I do look at you all as my little brothers and sisters from all over the world. So please connect with me. Hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Dr. Bowtie Todd. And let me hear from you. If there's anything you want to jump on a call or you want to share some thoughts, we can, I don't mind getting on a call with you and talking things out. Please share with you what you learned today. What's your takeaway? Because we want people to see that young people don't have to wait until they're 40, 50, 80 to lead. You're leading right now. So I hope and I challenge you all to go share what you learned today and let people understand your story. And that's why I love the platform, Hear My Story, because everyone on here has a beautiful story. And if you don't tell it, someone else will. So I leave you all with that thought. I turn it back over to our organizers to close us out. But once again, thank you all so much for having me. It was such a beautiful time to spend with everyone. And so, all right. So I turn it back over to our organizers.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all of us. We've learned a lot, and we are going from this conversation as different people. For closing, I wanted to tell you all thank you for joining us. It really warmed my heart. I didn't thought that many people would come in because it's our first global conversation, but I'm glad to be wrong. I want to tell you, as Todd told you first, we all should learn the history of these subjects, not just racism and discrimination. Every little subject. Every subject has so many movies, books, articles, not matter what. And it's just on this little device for you to watch. About racism, you can watch Coach Carter, Hidden Figures, American X, all amazing movies that is talking about racism, and I'm sure you will learn from this a lot. Thank you so much, and I'm expecting our next call.
All right, and I think you said, did you want to take a quick picture? If you guys want to put on your camera, we're going to take a quick photo.
You should just quit your share screen.
Okay, who's doing the picture? Do I need to take it? I'm not good at this stuff. Let's see here.
No, I will take it, but you need to quit
Okay.
the share screen, or I will see it all.
Okay. So you gonna take it, or is it right?
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all, you guys are like like I said, y'all are on my.
You should stop share the screen, and Ofek is gonna take the screenshot.
Oh, is the screen still up?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you all said that. Let me see how I can stop sharing my screen. I have like all these monitors here. Oh, here we go. Oh, look at that. I didn't even know. Y'all, I didn't even know the screen was still up. I was just talking away. All right, there we go.
Smile, everybody. Duke it.
Ready?
Thank you so much for joining us. It was great. And take care, everyone.
Have a great weekend. Love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing the reunion and the meeting, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.